The former Police Minister Bheki Cele and his successor Senzo Mchunu, who's currently on leave of absence, have given largely contradictory testimonies before Parliament's Ad Hoc Committee probing political interference, corruption and alleged underworld infiltration in the South African Police Service. Mchunu, who started testifying at the beginning of the week, denied knowing businessman, the alleged underworld figure Vusimuzi Matlala, who's being accused of being part of a crime syndicate known as the Big Five. He told MPs that he had, quote, never seen him with my naked eye, end quote, insisting he had no connection to Matlala or his alleged associates. Let's listen to some of what former minister, the minister on special leave, Senzo Mchunu, had to say.
There are no other things that I've been doing or that I do with Brown Mkhutz. I've been relating that. Nothing. No dinner, no lusikisiki, no fundraising that I have asked him to do. It has never happened. It has never happened. And if he claims, or anybody claims, I would want to see what evidence that would make people say, I have any other relationship with Brown Mkhutz, which I say I don't have. Now, if former Minister Bheki Cele would say at one point, I met Matlala, I met Mkhutz, and discussed something, that would be a lie, an outright lie. If it were to happen, it would be a lie, even without me asking for evidence, even before I do that, because I know that has never happened.
Well, hold on to that thought, because taking the hot seat on Thursday, Mchunu's predecessor, Bheki Cele, started by acknowledging that he, Cele, knows Matlala, quote-unquote, very well, telling Parliament that he personally met Matlala several times and even stayed twice at his luxury properties. He later, however, said he would not have associated with Matlala if he had known what he knows now about the man. Cele testified that Matlala told him, Cele, he'd been approached to fund a political project linked to Mchunu's reported ambitions to become ANC president or deputy president. So we'll get to unpacking it in a moment, but listen to what some of what former Minister Bheki Cele had to say on that score.
He comes to me because he realizes that he has been abused. After that, he says he has been approached by Sibia, General Sibia, to write an affidavit against Khumalo, so that Khumalo can be arrested. So this cat tells me.
Which Khumalo? You
Khumalo,
know quite a few Khumalos.
No, this one, the head,
Dr. Khumalo.
The head of the CI.
Yeah.
The head of the CI, the leader of the PKTT. Yeah. He says, so why? He said, no, I've come to you because of that. But what made me really come to you is that there is a case that is coming next week where I've taken Khumalo and his team to court for unlawful raid. So the reason is that I must take Khumalo to court so that he can lose the case and the Sibia finds the way to discipline him. That is Kat telling me the story. He goes on to say he was told or struck the affidavit of taking Khumalo was written by Sibia to say they've stolen his Rolex and the jewelry for the wife. So they must write it so that it's not just the raid, but it's also the theft. No, I remember him very well saying there was no Rolex stolen from him.
So to say that testimonies had tongues wagging the whole week would be an understatement. But what does it all mean? Let's unpack it with political analyst Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, who joins me now for that conversation. Prof, let me start with an overview. Just your overall impressions. The two men back to back, taking turns to take MPs into their confidence and face questions about their role and knowledge of some of these issues that are being probed at the moment. What's your overall impression of both Senzo Mchunu and Bheki Cele?
Good afternoon, Makocha, and good afternoon to your viewers. You know, this issue is like an onion that has been placed at the corner for some time. The more you peel it, the more it stings. There are more things that are coming to the fore. Of course, we always say that there are two sides to the story, your side and my side. My take is that there are always three sides to the story, your side, my side, and the truth. In this matter, you are hearing accusations and counter-accusations, which basically fits the first description, that is your side and my side. But we are yet to arrive at the third option, which is the truth, which is, I think, what both the Matlala Commission and the Ad Hoc Committee want to see. So the reality of the matter here, Tula Sizwe, is that our country is in trouble, deep trouble, if I may add. And the reason is that people have become allergic to the truth. If you speak the truth, then you become an enemy. In this case, we don't know for sure who is telling the truth between the former minister, Bheki Cele, and the minister who is on special leave, Minister Mchunu. So basically, we now have two sides of the story.
Yeah.
And then obviously, eventually, we will arrive at the third option, which is basically to arrive at the truth. But as things stand at the moment, we are lost as a nation because we are being given different information, which is conflicting. One heading south, the other one heading west, but eventually there should be a point of convergence whereby we see that these leaders are in fact telling the truth. That is all we're interested in, not necessarily defense and accusation, but all we want is the truth.
Well, are we not at least at the convergence with the truth in at least a couple of scores? One of them being about the problematic nature of money flows and funding for political campaigning, because part of the threads of this story is that former Minister Cele says he was told by Kat Matlala that Kat Matlala, had been asked to collaborate with Brown Mokgotsi to sort of fund the ambitions, the presidential ambitions of Minister Mchunu. And it's alleged that actually there was a meeting of some point that took place at some point, which Minister Mchunu obviously denies. But in all of this, the whole issue around January 8th, the whole issue around funding of political campaigning, at the very least, we can now pinpoint and say money in politics, in particular ANC politics, is a problem.
We have always known, Tula Sizwe, that political parties don't have enough money to run their activities. Be it January 8th statement or be it any other political party holding any political meeting, there will always be assistance, quote unquote, from somewhere. Whether it comes from Kat or it comes from Brown or it comes from whoever, the reality is there will always be money that is beefed up to support that particular activity. But what we don't know for sure in this instance is whether, first of all, Mchunu has ambitions for the presidency or the deputy presidency. We are not sure, but we suspect there is from what we're hearing. And then if we hear from him, he has no ambitions. Number two, has he been funded or has he been organizing meetings behind closed doors to fund his campaign? According to him, he has not done that. According to Cele, he has been told that, in fact, there are processes already underway. So we already have glimpses of the truth, but at the moment, we have to piece these things together. And luckily, it's not you and I, Tula Sizwe, going to do that. It's either the Ad Hoc Committee in Parliament or the Matlala Commission. Both of which, by the way, I'm not particularly impressed with because a lot of money is being used there. And at the end of the day, neither the Matlala Commission nor the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee have prosecutorial powers. So that is my main problem. I would have been comfortable if this was a court of law, and then what we're seeing is something that is happening, which eventually will then result into people being arrested. At the moment, it's just a fact-finding mission, and then the Matlala Commission will report to the president. And the president, by the way, is one of the people we are told is going to answer to the Matlala Commission. But then eventually he's the one who's going to receive the report. Already there is a question mark there.
Yeah.
Then on the other hand, we have the Ad Hoc Committee, which is supposed to submit its report to the Speaker. We may argue and say at least there might be some objectivity there, but then looking at how some of the members of the committee ask questions, some of them in fact are just doing political party work as opposed to doing what they were appointed to do, which is basically to represent Parliament and then represent the nation.
So those are the questions that will be answered by a further prosecutorial and other processes in terms of what tweaks in the system are needed. But talk to me about the questions that arise for the value judgment of the South African electorate, how they view their leaders. I'm asking here about the people, from the testimonies we've heard, the people that leaders allow themselves to be associated with. That question came up with Bheki Cele and his admission that he, quote unquote, knows Kat Matlala very well and stayed and accepted the benefit of staying at his properties from time to time. It was post his period as minister, yes, but the question is being asked nonetheless. In the case of Senzo Mchunu, that link seems to be coming up around Brown Mngomezulu in particular, and even the appointment of the chief of staff, just the character and quality of the person who's chief of staff. What do you make of that aspect of things? The questions that can only be answered by the South African electorate, what they make of the value judgment of their leaders about the people that they allow into their spaces.
On the first question, Tula Sizwe, there is a trust deficit between the electorate and the political leadership. I don't have to mince my words on that one. There is a trust deficit. In other words, in simple English, it means that voters no longer trust the majority of their politicians. I'm using the majority advisedly because there will still be a few politicians who are behaving the way politicians should behave, and then whose activities are grounded in truth. But then there are those with questionable characters, and then of course, those ones, the voters will definitely have a question with that. So there is a trust deficit there. Then on the other hand, I think there is something that I must say here. Former Minister Bheki Cele should be commended for, one, admitting that indeed, I know the person who is now on the hot seat, but honestly speaking, when I knew him, when I interacted with him, when I benefited from him, I didn't know what I now know. That is a fair comment because anyone can do that. You can align yourself with a particular individual only to hear a few years down the line that the person is a murderer, the person is a thief, the person is whatever. But at the time when you met that individual, you were not privy to that information. So on that score, I would say that Bheki Cele should be commended for that because he was upfront about it. As for Minister Mchunu, of course, I'm not in his shoes. I don't understand what he knows. And of course, he might be telling the truth in saying that he has never met Brown Mngomezulu, but then Brown Mngomezulu will have his turn and tell us if indeed what Mchunu is saying is correct. That is where then our first point comes in. We'll have Mchunu's side, and then we'll have Brown Mngomezulu's side. Then the point of convergence will be the actual truth.
All right, let's leave it there at this point. Thank you for your analysis and insights there.